Hey, what's up guys, Paulo Munoz here. Today I'm going to do an unboxing and a quick review of the Wacom ONE. So this is essentially a mini Cintiq, so I'm very excited to try this out. Let's go ahead and open it. Alright, so here is the Wacom ONE that we'll be looking at today. It is the pen display 12-inch and it looks like a great entry-level tablet that allows you to draw directly on the screen. So pretty much like a Cintiq in that sense. So the package comes with a cover and another box with the stand. Let's go ahead and see what's inside. There's some quick start guides like in most products, and the actual stand are just a couple of rubber semicircles and they feel quite nice, but I'm not sure how this will work. We'll see. The other box comes with the cover, which is just a protective clear case for the Wacom ONE, and it does feel nice and it's quite sturdy and strong. With the stand bits, you can twist the wide semicircle section so that it provides a more stable surface area, which is quite nice as well. Now let's get into the actual tablet. So inside the box, we have a quick reference of what it comes in the box, like the instructions, some replacement nibs, charger and pen, that sort of thing. And on the other side of this quick guide, there are 3 scenarios of how to connect the Wacom ONE depending on your setup. And I'll cover this bit later on in the video. The Wacom ONE is actually very light, which is nice. So if you plan to hold it on your lap when you're doing some casual sketching, it is ideal for that. Now the device is actually quite nice with some soft rounded corners. It reminds me a little bit of my older Cintiq 24-inch, but in a obviously smaller format with the thick bezels all around it. It has 4 rubber bits at the back to keep it in place when you are using it on a flat desk, for example. And it comes with 2 USB-C ports to connect it. The little fabric loop in here, which is basically your pen holder. Then you have these 2 buttons, one for power and another one to choose the display. So yeah, overall this is a pretty nice and clean design. We have the instructions and the warranty and just a little bit extra to show you how to connect and replace the nibs for your pen. And here are the pen replacement nibs, 2 little packages, one with 5 rubber nibs. Those are my personal favorites, and the other one has the plastic black ones as well. You also have 2 USB-C cables. They're pretty long, which is nice, so that it can reach under the desk and that sort of thing. And the pen itself is obviously not your Pro pen that you will find in an Intuos Pro or something like that. It is quite thin, but it does feel pretty light. At the bottom of the box, you have the adapter for the power, and all you have to do is click those 2 bits into place and then connect the USB-C here. That's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and put the cover on and try the stand. And it fits nicely. The rubber bits at the back are definitely something useful when working on a flat surface. And for the stand, you just need to place those 2 semicircles parallel to each other and place the tablet on top of it. Very, very simple. And this is surprisingly good and solid. I have to admit that I wasn't jumping out of my seat when I saw the stand bits, but I'm very glad to see that this actually worked really, really well. And the main thing is that it keeps the tablet in place. So it doesn't move, it doesn't slide. It's a very simple but very effective design. Another cool thing about the pen is that it doesn't need a battery, so you don't have to worry about charging it or anything like that. And when you're not using it, you can simply slide it into the fabric loop here at the top of the tablet. And finally, just to give you a reference of the size of this tablet, here is the Wacom ONE 12-inch next to my Intuos Pro Medium and a 13-inch Pixelbook, which is pretty much the same size as the iPad Pro as well. Alright, so here we have the Wacom ONE. Let's go ahead and plug this device and see how it works. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect it here on the top left. There we go. And let's go ahead and turn it on here. Alright, and it recognized the devices straight away. There we go. So I have Photoshop open. So let's do a quick test and see how these behaves. It looks pretty nice in terms of the displays. The colors are vibrant. Even though the screen is quite small, I mean, if you compare it with my hand, I can see everything quite well, and it works totally fine as like I said, as an entry-level sort of like Cintiq. So let's go ahead and try something out. I'm gonna turn off this screenshot. I'm gonna add a new one, and I'm gonna right-click. Cool. So the right-click is already set up perfectly fine. So I'm gonna use something with pressure just to show you. Maybe this one, just to show you how it works. So the sensitivity of the pressure is quite good as well. Let me just do it with a different brush. So this is one of the ones that I use the most, this soft rounded brush. So I start pressing a little bit harder, and you see how it creates a nice gradient all the way to when I'm pressing really, really hard. So yeah, in terms of the pressure sensitivity and how it recognizes the pressure on the tablet, I think it feels quite nice. Let's go ahead and try something else. I'm gonna do a new layer here. Let's try this one. There we go. Yeah, something like this, maybe with a smaller brush size. And another thing we can do, in case you didn't know about this, if you click on this icon here in Photoshop, this is the icon that basically controls the pressure. So everything or every brush is going to to react to the pressure of or how much you're pressing into the canvas or the document. If you leave this off, it's going to be based on the preset of the brush. So if I select, let's say, this hard brush, right, you'll see there is no pressure sensitivity, there's no size variation. If I enable this one, there's going to be size variation. So basically, when you have this little icon off, is going to rely on whatever preset you have in the brush. If you leave it on, regardless of the preset, it's going to give you that pressure sensitivity. So I just thought I'd mention it because it is quite useful. So let's go ahead and select something else, this one, and I'm just going to do a couple of like hatching effects, something that I would potentially use in Photoshop for creating my comic style characters, and that's the type of thing that I would go for. If I press really hard, I get this. If I press really softly, I get these other bits and pieces. So in general, I think this works quite well. It's super responsive. I'm happy with this. Now, the only thing that is quite noticeable for me, at least, is the size, right? So like I said, it is a small device, so it is portable, and that's one of the great things that it has going for it. But because I work on a 27-inch monitor or a Cintiq for most of the time, the size difference is quite noticeable. So let me just give you a comparison with the Cintiq monitor. So here we go. So this is Zbrush. This is a character that I've been working on. And I created this UI. This is a custom UI to suit this 27-inch device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this into the Wacom ONE, into the monitor of the Wacom ONE, so that you can see how small everything looks, just as a comparison. But then I'll show you how I would work around that. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's bring in Zbrush in here, and this works like any other monitor, right? So I just dragged this from one monitor into this one. Let's maximize it, and this is the screen size, or like the real estate that you have to work with. So if I use my Pixel 6 phone, just to overlay here on top, you'll see that that's pretty much the size of the screen that you have to work with this current UI, right? So that is something to keep in mind, that if you have like something for Zbrush, for instance, that you have a custom UI, then the space that you have to actually work on is quite limited. However, what I've done is I have mapped some of the brushes that I use the most, or some of the tools that I use the most to shortcuts. So I can bring them in like so. So this palette is a custom palette. I also have this one that has all my custom brushes. So let's say I'm going to use something like the clean buildup, right? And then the other thing I can do is collapse this right-hand side. So I can double click on this. And by the way, these are kind of like tips or advice that I would give for someone working on Zbrush specifically. But you can do the same thing with a bunch of other software. So let's collapse this one like so. And then if you want to get rid of all of these items, just to you can work freely. And then when you need them, you just bring them back. You just press the tab on your keyboard. So now I have a full screen, and that is a lot more comfortable, right? So again, if you compare it, this is kind of like the area that we had before to work. So it's almost like double, right? So that's totally fine, right? And then I can just go ahead and work this way. Let's go ahead and go into solo mode. Like I said, I have mapped all of these to custom shortcuts. So I'm gonna bring in my custom palette, like I mentioned. So that brings in all the brushes that I need. So I'm gonna select this one and right click, reduce the brush size, and then I can start polishing some of the, the facial. Maybe let's give this guy some kind of like expression actually. So I'm gonna bring in the brushes again, and maybe increasing the brush size, and let's add a bit of a smile to this guy. And let's go ahead and use a different brush. I'm gonna bring in maybe the standard brush, and I'm gonna increase the volume, like compression, falls, and things like that, just to go with the expression a little bit more. So I know that this is not necessarily a tutorial on sculpting or anything of that nature, but I just wanted to show you, like, purely because of the size of the screen, that it might be something that might put you off and say, oh, this is too small for me to work with. I just wanted to show you that, there's definitely workarounds, and I want to show you that you can also map all your, custom shortcuts and things like that to work in a full screen, where you don't have to have the entire UI, available to you. So this is usually what I would do. And to be honest, even though this is the small screen, this is how I prefer to work on the larger screen so that I don't have distractions of the UI and things like that. So I tend to go for full screen when I'm like focusing on sculpting, and then I just use my custom shortcuts to bring in these palettes, right? Now, the other one, go back into Photoshop. You can do exactly the same thing. If you press tab, it also goes into full screen, so you have more space to work with. So again, the same thing. Let's go ahead and select. I'm gonna do a new layer here, and I'm gonna select something like this one right here. All right, and let's go into full screen. All right. So what I've done with the pen of the Wacom ONE is that I have mapped these two buttons to different menus. So the first button, or the one that is at the bottom, is basically my right click. And if I want to, I can access the eyedropper to select a color. So that is done with the one at the top. So if I press that one, you'll see I get my color picker, right? My eyedropper. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm gonna go ahead and select something like maybe like this dark color here, and then right click, reduce the brush size, and then I can start. Oh, let's actually change the brush. All right, so I can start adding a bit of color. Let's say if this is just a screenshot that I'm using as a work in progress, maybe this guy has some kind of beard, right? And I just started to figure out like the design for it. So the idea with the eyedropper, which is, again, you can map this to absolutely anything that you want, is that I can pick and choose from, let's say, some of the values here, and then I can start adding some highlights like so. All right, so I'm gonna pick it from here, and once I've added some of these quick values, I can go ahead and pick from the ones that I just added and continue working like so. I can go back and darken them up a little bit. But there you go. This is a quick example of how you can use this device in something like Photoshop or for 3D sculpting in Zbrush. So overall, I think it is a fantastic entry-level device. Again, it is comparable to the Cintiq in the sense that you can have a screen. So it's literally a separate monitor, and then you can sculpt or you can paint directly on top of the screen, which is a nice added value compared to something like the Intuos Pro or something like that, right? So it is really, really nice. The few things that are important to highlight if you're considering to go for a device like this is obviously the screen size, but then again, it is very, very portable, so it just fits any backpack really nicely. And if you use a laptop, it works straight away. And that brings me to my next point, which is the connectivity. All right. So now that I give you this quick overview, let's go ahead and talk about the connectivity, because I think it is quite important. So with the Wacom box, you get two of these USB-C cables, and that's all you need to connect the device into, let's say, a laptop. If for whatever reason your laptop doesn't have enough power to power the device, that's when you use two cables, one directly into the screen or into the laptop, and the other one goes straight into the electricity. But if for some reason you have a PC tower with a dedicated graphics card, for example, like I have in my main workstation, in that case, you need a 3-to-1 cable, which I'm going to cover in just a second. All right, so what I have here is obviously the Wacom ONE, and I have a MacBook Air, and this is one of the USB-C cables that come with the Wacom ONE. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in with nothing else into the first socket here. There we go. And obviously have the stands, and let's give it a second. And there we go. We now have a second screen, and we can just go ahead and start painting. And obviously it recognizes the pressure and all of that. So this is good to go, and it works, like I said, totally fine if you have a laptop, something like the MacBook Air, or just any laptop really should be fine as long as you have a USB-C. Now, you might have a similar setup where you have the Wacom ONE and a laptop, but if you cannot see the screen, that means the device itself doesn't have power enough. And this light right here on the top, this one right here, it will be flashing. So if it is flashing, it indicates that there is not enough power. So in that case, you need to plug in the second cable into this section right here, and that provides the power for the tablet. Now, this is kind of like the ideal scenario. We only need one cable, and if you're on the go, just pack those two devices, one cable in your backpack, and then you're good to go. Now, if you're using a PC tower, something a little bit more complex, like a dedicated graphics card, like an NVIDIA card or something like that, there's a chance that the Wacom ONE is not going to work straight away with one USB-C. So in that case, and that's what I had to do, you have to use a 3-to-1 cable. So this is also from Wacom. So you have one cable, one USB-C cable that goes into the Wacom, so only one. But then you have these three that go into the computer. So you have one USB-C that actually adapts or attaches to the power, a USB for data, and then this is your HDMI that goes in at the back of your graphics card, right? So you'll have these three that go into the PC and into the power, and from there you get only one cable that goes into the Wacom ONE. So it might look a little bit cumbersome because they're like 3 cables into one, but at the end of the day, once you plug it in, if you're gonna work always in that workstation, you only need one cable. That's it. Now, in a different scenario where you actually are on the go, and that's personally what I would use the Wacom ONE for, I would connect it to a laptop, you only need to have one USB-C. So it's kind of like having different scenarios depending on how you want to work. I just want to cover the different scenarios because it happened to me, and I know it could be a little bit frustrating if you get a brand new device and you don't have all the things to get it up and running. So just keep in mind that if you have a tower PC, it's better to go for the 3-in-1 from Wacom. And if you're using it for a laptop or just to draw on a laptop, that would be the best ideal scenario for the Wacom ONE specifically. Then you only need the USB-C that comes with it. All right, to wrap up this video, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a time lapse where I'm going to show you how I adapt my workflow to work in a smaller screen within the Wacom ONE. Just to prove that you can do it in the same way that I do it in a larger screen. It's just about setting things up slightly different. So I'm going to create kind of like a helmet for the character that I show you in the same workflow that I would use in the Cintiq, but in the Wacom ONE. All right, so this is the Wacom ONE screen, and let me just go ahead and jump into a time lapse where I can show you how I would go to create an extra asset. So I'm gonna mask out the top of the head of the character, and I'm gonna extract that in Zbrush. So that basically creates a set of polygroups that I can then tweak and adjust, and following kind of like the volume of the head. So that's probably one of the easiest way of doing this type of assets. Once I have the basic, I just use the series measure to essentially create a simpler, cleaner version of the topology, and that allows me to adjust it and clean it up a little bit. So that's pretty much what I'm doing here. I'm just duplicating the same asset, duplicating the same kind of like helmet, and using the topology that I had as a base to create other pieces. So this is exactly the same thing that I'm doing here for the, let's say, kind of like side panel of the helmet. I'm reusing the topology that I already created, and using the series measure, I can create a new topology based on the new shape that I have. Now, to add details, you can use a bunch of different tools. I'm just using a very simple IMM brush to, just to show you that this is something that I would use on a on a regular basis, kind of like my workflow, to create these details. And once I have these subdivision levels and I have all the pieces with subdivision, I can just go ahead and start detailing and add some like secondary forms, some dents, indentations, some scratches, and that's mainly what I'm doing here. So to do that, I'm using the damp standard brush and the clay brush as well, just pushing things in and combining everything at the end. And I'll add a little bit of the a bit of noise, really, just to make it a bit more interesting. This is not something that I do straight away, but at the end of when I'm finishing up a subtool, this is something that I add as a high frequency details. Alright, so that's it for this video. Hopefully you find it useful. I would say that the Wacom ONE is a fantastic little device for most artists. It provides an affordable entry point for most hobbyists and, artists that want to get into the digital world and experience kind of like what it is to draw directly on the screen, similar to the Cintiq, but a much more cheaper, affordable price. However, for more professional artists, I think there are different options or different products within the Wacom range as well that are more suitable for a professional environment. So if I'm on the go, I just simply need to pack a USB-C cable, this little device, and the laptop, and I will be able to experience kind of like the same setup where I have right now at home with the Cintiq, but with the Wacom ONE. So hopefully this helps. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll try to answer them. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.